Good morning, everybody. Welcome to an intensity morning. This was a test of your systems to see whether your sound levels were working. Now we've ascertained everybody's sound level is working. So today, by the end of this session, you're going to know the difference between raw black and green teas, raw black and fully fermented teas at a minimum. You're going to think about and be able to talk about quality characteristics of raw blacks. So these things are all very important things that we're going to cover during this session today. So let's go ahead and get started. You'll notice that I review a few things today that I might not ordinarily review because we have a number of new people. So welcome all the newbies who are on this morning. Don't feel lost if you're not understanding everything, because I'll repeat many things. And if you really don't understand some aspect, go ahead and feel free to ask. Now, for those of you who are late risers and haven't checked your email yet, I sent you a map this morning. And the map lists 14 mountains in Yunnan province, specifically in the Sichuan-Bana prefecture. Now, through Sichuan-Bana runs a major river. This is a 2,700-mile long river, which in Chinese is called Lancang, L-A-N-C-A-N-G. In Vietnam, it's called Mekong, M-E-K-O-N-G. Same river. It starts in Shanghai up in the mountains and runs all this way through China, exits through Vietnam, Laos, and other, or wanders through other Southeast Asian countries, and is very important. It is directly supportive of 60 million plus people who live close by or on the river. So I'm going to take a small detour and then we'll come back to the tea. And the small detour involves this river because this river is systematically being dammed up in China. And as a result, this affects all the countries, other countries that it runs through. And China really hasn't talked much with other countries about this end result. And this is making tensions evident in other Southeast Asian countries. So just a little background about what's going on with that river. Sichuan-Bana, the place where these mountains are, is a subtropical area, warm, moist, and humid. The 6 most famous ancient mountains are on the right-hand side of the Lancang River. We're not going to talk about those mountains except to point out that they're 6 ancient famous mountains. We're going to be on the left side. Now, for those of you who don't do sides, let's talk about directions. So the ancient trees are on the northeast side. The newer villages, and this doesn't mean that they don't have ancient trees, and we'll talk about this in a minute, is on the western side of the Lancang River. Nannuo is one of those places, N-A-N-N-U-O. And that's where we're going today. We're going to Nannuo village. Very, very famous in the tea world among drinkers of raw black as well as fully fermented teas. This village, it's actually a set of 9 villages, has been around for thousands of years. It's indigenous people, several different indigenous peoples in this area. It is hugely difficult to get to. Infrastructure is not very easy to get to this. The villages themselves are hard to find. You go up this road and you're driving, and it feels like you're driving forever. There are pigs on the side of the road cautioning you to go slowly. There are chickens and ducks walking across the street to make sure you do go slowly. And then there's cliffs on the right side, sometimes on the left side, also as a guarantee that you proceed up this road slowly. What is good about Nannuo villages is uniformly they built them downstream. What do I mean by this? So as you're going up the mountain, you have choices when you build, right? You can build to get that fabulous view, or you can build a little lower on the mountain. You still get a fabulous view, but you don't influence the forest. Unlike Bingdao, where they built upstream and then the runoff from the build is killing the trees. The guys in Nannuo, the individuals in Nannuo built downstream. So this is great. The forests are unaffected. Walking through these forests is magical. The particular village where intensity comes from, you can't find this next to the road. You park, and then you start walking. Now, in the beginning of the forest, that's more planted. But then you get to the real interior villages, which are unplanted. They're tended by humans, but they're unplanted. These things, these areas are at least 300 years old. Most of them, especially as you get deeper into these forests, are at least 800 years old. In general, these are called ancient tree forests, even though by definition, and we've talked about this definition before, 100 to 1,000 years is usually called old tree. Why do they call these ancient tree? Because they've been able to identify at least 800 plus year old trees. And some of those they've been able to identify up to 1,300 years old. And so the result is trying to identify exactly which tree. Oh, is this one 850? Is it 950? Is it 999 years old? You know, if it's 999 years old, it's near ancient. But they haven't identified all of them. And therefore, that's why it's old to ancient. Beautiful area, beautiful people in this area, different customs. They're great when we come to visit because they know we're doing big cup tea. And so it's really funny. Usually they entertain people who come up to see their forest. But with us, they turn it over to the tea master right away. They say, you brew because you know how you want to brew. What they're doing in these areas are doing 3 types of teas. Primarily, it's raw black and fully fermented. And we'll talk about the difference between those two in a minute. They also do a little bit of red tea. So let's get the rainbow out and discuss that rainbow. Red tea. I'm not talking about rooibos. I'm talking about what the British call black tea. British got this translation all messed up because they didn't understand that there were true black teas. No, not black, it's red. Chinese have always called it red. The determining characteristic is it's heavily oxidized. Okay, that's the last we're going to talk about red tea today. Let's go deeper into that rainbow. We have raw black and fully fermented, which sometimes, and again, this is the influence of English, they call dark teas. Now, that's not me. I don't call these things dark teas. I call them black teas, which is how they're called truly in Chinese. Hey, cha. Hey has never previously, until recent years, been defined as dark. Yes?
Would raw black be referred to as hei cha?
Now, this is a great question. Would raw black be referred to as hei cha? Complicated? The answer is technically yes, but they have a special term for it. So this is a great question because it leads to these two terms that you should understand. One is called shengpu, S-H-E-N-G-P-U. And that means raw black or uncooked or unripened puer. Actually, that's the technical name. But realistically, here we call it raw black. So it is not fully fermented. That's what that means. By definition, and I'm going to walk you through this definition and prove to you why it should be called this way. It is closer to green tea when it starts than it is to fully fermented. Then you have shoupu, S-H-O-U-P-U is one way it's spelled. Sometimes it's pronounced and spelled a different way. Shupu, S-H-U-P-U. Either way, means the same thing. Fully fermented, earthy, foamy. Now let's see, how long does it take to become fully fermented? This seems like I'm skipping around. Don't worry, I'll get you to the basics in a minute. But I gotta, get this color palette all taken care of before we start into the basics. So it takes 3 months to actually compost the tea through bacterial agencies, change the nature of the tea so it's earthy and loamy. Now, we're not going to spend time on this fully fermented. Today, we're all about raw black. So let's jump in. What's the process of raw black? Oh, by the way, raw black sometimes you hear called, especially if somebody's showing off in a tea shop. Oh yes, I have Maocha, M-A-O-C-H-A. And when I show off, what I say is 70% completed tea or unfinished tea. What is that process? You pick. So you go, in this case where intensity is not plantation tea. Oh my God, I just introduced another term. I better define it before we move forward. Plantation tea is the clone tea. So when you go to tea fields and bush after bush is about the same size, trim, beautiful, neat rows, that's plantation tea. What we're having today is not plantation tea. By and large, most of it is self-propagated. What does that mean? The tea leaf just throws its seeds around? Well, essentially, yes. With help of insects, birds, and animals, the tea trees grew themselves versus plantation tea. This is an important differentiation because when we come down to taste, I'm going to refer to plantation tea and I'm going to refer to ancient tea. All right, so we're picking in this forest. What do we pick? We pick the remaining bud. And what do I mean by remaining bud? This isn't early spring. This is deeper into the spring where that initial tree bud, this is not a flower bud, the initial leaf bud, not tree bud, that's ridiculous. A leaf bud comes up and then 5 leaves are going to come from this bud. They wait until 3 leaves are showing and they pick the bud, and usually 3, sometimes 2 if they're trying to achieve another effect in terms of flavor. So they pick those, and after they pick them, they take them back down to the farm, and on the farm, they sun dry. And they sun dry, you're going to ask me a question, and I might have to say I don't know. I can give you a range though. They're going to sun dry anywhere from a day to 2 to 3 days. What are they looking to do? They're looking to reduce the moisture content in the bud and those 2 or 3 tea leaves. Why? If you don't reduce that moisture content down to about 60%, what's the result going to be? Later on, when you actually try and roll the leaves, they're going to roll apart. Oh, that sounds bad. Let me put it another way. They're going to break apart. And then you're going to get all these broken leaves instead of rolled leaves that are still constituted. So that's why they try and get the water level down. After getting the water level down, so remember, they picked, they brought back to the farm, they've sun-dried. Now they're going to reduce the water level one step further. And most importantly, they're going to stop oxidation. Reminder, oxidation occurs when you expose something to oxygen in the air. This is a bad scientific definition, but it's a sufficient definition for today. Because think banana, you take the peel off, the outside of the banana changes, flavor profile changes. Yes.
Might there be a difference between sun drying and indoor drying in that there might be some photochemistry going on with sun drying that has a meaningful impact on the quality?
Yes, so this is a great question. What in the world and why in the world do green tea producers frequently do indoor drying versus outdoor drying? The producers of raw black always do outdoor drying. Uh-oh, I better put that little footnote. There is a time when they don't do it, and that is if it's raining. But outside of a raining period, they always do it. And let's talk about why. When you do indoor drying, do you care about any bacterial agents that might be on the leaves? The answer is no. In fact, you're going to get rid of all of those bacterial agents because when you fry those green tea leaves, it's going to be between 300 to 400 degrees. You're going to kill them dead. With the raw black, you don't want to do that. You want to put them to sleep. And by sun drying, you start them on the process to stasis. You continue that process at the next step, which is to actually fry the leaves. Now, I just told you with green tea, you're 300 to 400 degrees, serious frying. Now, you're not trying to brown the leaves, but you're certainly trying to quickly deactivate the enzymes which cause oxidation. Remember, we just said oxidation is when you create a situation where you expose the insides of the leaves to oxygen. Once you have deactivated the two main enzymes related to oxidation in the tea leaf, with green tea, that's it. It won't oxidize by and large. With raw black, so again, let's get the order of this. You picked, you brought it to the farm, you withered, now you're ready to fry it. Are you frying it at 300 to 400 degrees? The answer is no, a much lower temperature. So now we have to get in the science weeds. I promise you, I won't be there for very long. This is a short science weeds. What temperature? Remember, oxidation occurs on a bell curve. 88 about degrees Fahrenheit is the fastest oxidation. When you get to 150, it essentially denatures the enzyme. No more oxidation. So they pan fry for a shorter time than green tea and at a lower temperature, around 200, sometimes 225. And what they're trying to do is two things: denature or deactivate the oxidation enzyme, and secondly, to really put those bacterial elements. So bacterial elements, what does that mean? Bacteria, yeast, fungi, those type of things into true stasis. Yes.
You said 88 degrees is the fastest, you mean it's the lowest temperature at which you can actually denature the green enzyme? You said 88 to 150 or?
No, you're not denaturing. It's the fastest, it's the temperature where oxidation occurs the fastest. So it's this bell curve.
Oh,
So at
interesting.
32, almost no oxidation. At 88, oh, we're out there in the crowd oxidizing. Down to 150, uh-oh, it's too hot to oxidize. We better get an air condition.
Perfect.
Okay. So, all right. We finished frying the raw black. We finished frying the green. So far, you see some differences there, right? Green, higher temperature. Sometimes when you are frying the green, you also shape it. So give me some examples. Dragon well, peacock's tongue. Those are shaped at the same time they're fried. Sometimes you roll the green tea after it's fried. Give me examples of that. Wong's Creation, Chara, Venerable Silver Tip. So these are all things you've seen on the board here. What about raw black? What do you do after you low temp, so to speak, fried the raw black? Oh, time to actually roll. And when they roll traditionally, they have bamboo mats that they roll on. They're cross-hatched, and they have really expert hands that have been doing rolling for more than 10 years. Not foreign hands that when they try and roll, they get out of rhythm. It's the difference between somebody who's playing scales for the first time and Horowitz when he was at his prime playing piano. So you see an obvious difference, right? The amateur never quite gets it right. The experts have this rhythm, and what they're trying to do is break down the cell structures of the leaves and also create a leaf that looks a certain way. So there's an aesthetic and there's a scientific reason for doing that. They usually roll anywhere from 45 minutes to 90 minutes. At the conclusion of rolling, whether it's green tea or raw black, what happens? Well, with green tea, it's real easy. You bake it. Why? You need the water content to be 3%. This is with green tea. Now with raw black, what are you going to do? Let's see. I sun-dried it before. You know what? Maybe I should sun-dry it again. What's the purpose the second time around for sun-drying? Remember, you applied the heat when you fried it to put these organisms into, microorganisms, I should say, into stasis. When you sun-dry it, you wake them up and they get ready to become active. So at this point, the farmer has a decision on a decision tree to make. They can stop right there after they've woken up the microorganisms, pack it, and sell it as loose leaf. Most farmers, well, sell it as loose leaf or else store it themselves as loose leaf. They do both things. Most farmers put some away for storage. Very little do they actually sell as loose leaf. Most of them compress into cakes, tea cakes, and sell it or dry the cakes, go through that process and sell it that way. That's what most farmers do. We get the majority of ours as loose leaf, and we specifically go to different farms and ask for the loose leaf. Sometimes we get it from their collections, sometimes we get it from that direct harvest, but that's what we're interested in. We also, on occasion, get cakes, but we're more interested, and it's easier for you as the consumer to try different loose leaves rather than to make a bulk purchase of cakes. So that's why we do that. Okay, how am I doing here? Let's see. Oh, I'm doing bad. Okay. We have lots to cover, and I'm still going to get everything in. Trust me. But the tea master has been hovering over. I was wondering why she was hovering here for so long. Now I understand. And she just said, extremely thirsty. And now I know all of you are extremely thirsty. Is there a question before I move forward? Okay. So without further ado, let me bring forward the tea master. Shall we?
Yeah. 你好，早上好。We do 生普 raw black tea. Okay, so I prepare my coffee myself. Yeah. This is
So you're going to watch. So for the new people who are on, you're going to watch her technique, and then she will brew first. You'll see us go through quality assessment, and then you'll brew together. So what she's doing right now is she has a package which resembles yours. She's emptied the tea leaves into the package. And you should take a look at those leaves once you empty them into the glass, because they're beautiful. They're varied colors, and it's very reminiscent of shangpu, or raw black, that comes from Nannuo Mountains. So why am I making this point? Because your experience, the way you learn about raw black is tasting the mountain. And the way we teach here is about tasting ancient tree, because that, and you'll see why in a minute, is the most interesting of the raw blacks. All right, so she heats the cup. You can use any degree water between 175 and 200 when you're heating the cup. At the end of the day, when you actually brew, you're going to use 170-degree water. Making sure, oh, and why does she have 3 cups? And do you have to have 3 cups? The answer is no, you don't have to. You can do it in 2 cups. But we use 3 because we can dissipate the steam faster using 3 cups. And in a minute, you're going to see what dissipating the steam looks like. So she's drawing 175-degree water, which is already pre-programmed in our water tower. She's going to dissipate the steam. By the time she actually uses the water will be about 170 degrees. When you're brewing this type of tea, ancient tree or old tree tea, usually you want a lower temperature. Lower temperature will bring out all the flavors better than the higher temperature. You notice that there's a certain rhythm which the tea master is doing. Not in a hurry, but just steady. All right, she's gotten it down to the temperature she wants. She's going to put the leaves in the heated cup. Making sure that the cup that she's going to put it in has just released its heat. Puts it in, shakes it up. Smells it to make sure she has the right tea in there. Puts the 170 or so degree water into the recipient cup, sets the timer. Okay. And so it's always fun to look at the raw blacks because there's an aesthetic to them as well, isn't there? So you see them hanging from above, you see them standing below. Always fun to watch this process. This is a 2-minute steep. And you heat the recipient cup. So this is how this is set up. So we'll look one more time at this, make sure that we're seeing this in the proper way. All right. So we were going through this processing and we were talking about at the end of the raw black, you heat up using sunlight, and then you have this decision, are you going to make cakes or are you going to serve it, not serve it, but sell it as loose leaf, or are you going to sell it to somebody to actually fully ferment the tea leaves? So those are the three decisions, or the fourth one, are you going to fully ferment it yourself? And at these mountains, they do all of those things. So during the picking season, you have people from the tea industry, and we run into them all the time. The major manufacturers down in the cities, which are usually 20 to 30 miles away, and they're coming up to look at and taste both the plantation tea and the old ancient tea. Plantation tea and old ancient tea. What are the differences? With plantation tea, you use that as a base to make blends, because all of the terroirs where plantation tea is grown are different. And so the flavor is usually more bitter, more astringent, weaker over the long haul. So you blend as a tea professional to try and overcome that. All right, your timer has gone off. You watch the tea master separate the tea leaves from the tea liquor. And you notice she didn't cover the tea. This tea doesn't like to be covered when it's brewing. You see lots of mistakes with this. Covers. And let's take a look at this. We're going to enter the quality arena fairly quickly. So first off, let's look at this color. Oh, not green. Hints of yellow. Wow, really yellow. Is that characteristic of raw ancient black in Nannuo Mountain? Absolutely. Wherever you're getting it in Nannuo Mountain, whichever village I mean, and if it's ancient, it's got to be something of this color, either slightly darker or slightly lighter. If you're getting greenish, much more greenish, not right, not right, something wrong. Okay, so the other thing is I'm looking at the leaves. Woo, these are beautiful, very distinctive smell. And so when you're going through quality appreciation, these are the things you're going to do. So this is 170 degree, and I'm going to take a 170 degree sip. So for those of you who are new, this is distinguished from a 200 degree sip. A 200 degree sip is an inhalation. 170 degree, you can get more in your mouth. And what you're looking for is to identify three things. One, where is the astringency? All tea has some degree of astringency. Is there bitterness? In plantation tea, you expect also to have some bitterness. In the ancient tree, there will be a little, but not much, and it'll dissipate really fast. And then you're going to look for density of mouthfeel. Yes.
Participant says the dry leaves have a citrusy scent to them.
Oh my goodness. So we're starting out with citrusy scent of dried leaves. And I don't disagree. There is that. And you're capturing something. No, you're capturing a feeling, an aroma that's characteristic of this particular terroir. And everyone in China who's a tea professional says there is a fruitiness to this. Good catch. So let's take that 170 degree sip. You roll it around in your mouth. You think about Is there astringency? If so, where? Is there any bitterness? If so, how much? Degree? What is the mouthfeel aside from that? You swallowed it. Is there an aftertaste? And then lastly, energetics. And again, for those of you who are new, sometimes you hear people talk about energetics like, what's the chi of the tea? We don't do that here. We talk about energetics because there's a specific feeling that you get, and it's different for everybody because we're genetically different. So some of us, it may be cooling, some of us, it may be warming, calming to the stomach. There's a whole bunch of things that fit into energetics. Don't feel badly if you don't feel energetics, or you feel extraordinary energetics. All of that is within the realm of possibility. Now, you take a second, I'm taking a second sip, not you yet, because you're going to get your chance in a minute, and I'm going to verify the quality aspects, and I'm going to start to identify flavors and aromas. My goodness. Okay, and I'm not going to tell you anything because in a minute, you're going to tell me everything. So it's your turn to brew. I've ascertained what I think are the quality characteristics of this. I have also ascertained preliminary taste and aroma attributes of this. All right, Tea Master sets up again. You can set up with either 2 cups or 3 cups. If you set up with 3 cups, you'll be able to dissipate the steam faster. In the beginning, she's heating up all 3 cups to make sure everything is absolutely clean. There are no soap stains or anything, nothing to interfere with the flavor. And then she's going to draw 170-degree water. And by the way, it looks like she doesn't live in a state where there's drought because there's water on tea pits and so forth. It's rained a lot recently. So this is how they do it in China. They have tea pits on. This tray drains into the sink. She's drawn the 175-degree water and is dissipating the steam in all of the cups, using all of the cups. And again, not in a hurry. This is calm, collected. Okay, and you have bag number 1 labeled intensity. It's already pre-measured. Use all the leaves, put them in the heated cup. Make sure your timer is set for 2 minutes. Shake the cup so you can start to get a sense of what this might smell like, and add the water. Your timer should be 2 minutes.
Forms a nice kelp forest, says one of the participants.
Love that description. A nice kelp forest. So what you're telling me is, aside from the beauty of drinking this tea, there's an aesthetic beauty to how it brews up. And that's absolutely true because you've got top and bottom, and already you're seeing a change in color very quickly. All right. So we've gotten you to differences between green and raw black. The waking up of the microorganisms, the purpose for that is they start to interact with the insides of the leaf, because remember, they've been rolled, and form flavor components and form chemical constituents. We talked about you've got monoclonal or plantation tea versus that's growing in the forest. Monoclonal, they have to blend because, and they blend from different areas to try and enhance the flavor. The flavor from monoclonal leaves the cup much faster than the flavor of old and ancient tree. And so you can get many more steeps from the old and ancient tree than you can from the monoclonal. I mean, you can get as many steeps as you want from both, but one will taste good for a long time and one will taste nothing after X amount of steeps. So that's the difference. So I ask you this, do these imaginative tea owners, tea producer owners, do they blend ancient tree leaves? And generally speaking, no, because the ancient tree is already unique. And we'll talk about this uniqueness because there's a scientific reason for this uniqueness. I'll get to that in a minute. So your timer's gone off. You're separating the tea leaves from the tea liquor.
Can you please remind us of the level of caffeine in raw black relative to green, red, and oolong?
Yes, I'm happy to remind you of the relative nature of caffeine in this versus greens and others. So remembering that this is minimally processed, just like green, this has higher levels of caffeine. So let's use some numbers because, you know, we're Americans, we need numbers. So for us, these raw blacks usually have somewhere between 50 and 65 milligrams per cup. A cup of coffee would be about 180 and 200 per cup. So that gives you some sense of the caffeine levels. In green tea, it would be equivalent. In red tea, it would be somewhere between 40 and 50. And in the heavily roasted oolongs, it'd be between 15 and 25. So again, the principle is what? You process more, there's less caffeine. White tea, which is essentially unprocessed, has the highest levels of caffeine. Yes.
The tea liquor is very cloudy, lots of good stuff floating around, I imagine.
So the tea liquor is very cloudy. It is somewhat cloudy. Oh, I see what you mean. Yes. So there's lots of trichomes in there, and mine have settled on the bottom. That's why I'm not seeing a lot of cloudiness in this.
Another comment, instantly but pleasantly drying in the mouth, smooth mouthfeel, and wonderful umami coming through for us.
Instantly and pleasantly setting in the mouth, drying in the mouth, and an umaminess to this. Great comment on that. And so let's talk a minute, and again, we're falling into science for a minute, and then I'll get out of it. So tea leaves, when they're growing, they're converting, depending on location, some degree of the amino acids which control umaminess and sweetness into polyphenols. And so the hotter it is, the faster that conversion goes. The more sunlight there is, the faster that conversion goes. So it depends where this tea grows on the mountain. And that's why if you're growing in a big old forest and you're surrounded by other plants, can you, and you're ancient, can you be bitter? And the answer is almost impossible because your leaves aren't reaching the sun. You're under a canopy. And so you have more amino acids than polyphenols. And that's what you're tasting. And that's why you're getting hints of umaminess and hints of sweetness. And this is why they don't blend the ancient tree. The other reason, let's think about ancient tree for a minute. Now we're going to get into more science. I think this is the worst. If you can survive this next minute, then this would be the worst of what you have to tolerate in terms of science today. So tea trees usually are somewhere between 6 to 20 feet tall. And usually, depending on age, the tallness of them, the height of them, I should say, is equivalent roughly to the spread of the roots. Why is this important? The farther out your roots go, they go deep, they go different depths into the soil, they get different nutrients. So if you ask me, is every tea tree exactly the same in terms of its chemical composition? I ask you back, is that even possible? And the answer is, of course not. Now, one more thing, and then I'll start to get to your comments. There's an assumption that the tea world makes, both in China and here. You know what that assumption is with raw black? They think, bigger leaves, older tree. Because, we assume, age, you get older. Think of the sequoias, those huge old things, huge, real old. The other assumption, and by the way, I've used the word assumption on purpose, is thicker leaves. Oh, this means power. This is really what I want. So tea drinkers in China have this misapprehension. It's a complete falsity. And they have it through their eyes because they let their eyes guide them instead of letting experience. Well, most of them don't have experience going to the mountains. That's what the real issue is. You have large leaf varietals and you have small leaf varietals. All of them can become old. We've seen a tree that's 3,500 years old. When we looked at the leaves, both Xiaobei and I said, we can't believe this. The tree itself looked huge. The leaves were really tiny. It was a small leafed variety. We've seen tea trees that are a couple hundred years old. Huge old leaves, thick, looking full of energy, nutrients, and power. Remember, I said certified 200 years old. Yes.
Who comes around and tests the trees for age?
So are scientists not busy in China, and do they just have time to go around and check for age? Well, the agricultural scientists sure do. That's their job. And they test using several different modalities. First off, within a growth, when a tree falls. Okay, easy to test. Then they look for other signs around the tree which indicate age. So you have actual agricultural scientists from all over China. It's really a big deal when they discover new groves and all these scientists wander down there. Then they have a meeting afterwards. Well, we see this, we see that. We've seen other trees right next to them. We've seen trees that have fallen. We determine age. Okay, so this is why you don't blend old and ancient normally, because you're getting a very consistent and unusual flavor that's already aged while it's alive. And that's really the magic of raw black. Yes.
A participant says that for her, there's an initial strong scent of clove in the liquor, which fades as she drinks, but then it returns later as a scent / flavor in her mouth as she swallows.
I love this comment, not because I would have made it, but because it's giving you suggestions to look for things within this particular raw black, which is proper from the Nannuo raw blacks. The comment was, hey, you know, you put cloves in this. Well, the commentator didn't quite say that, but that was the impression that there was a clove flavor which seemed to disappear and then reappear. These phantom flavors, and I use the word phantom in the wrong way because it's not that they're unreal. They aren't unreal. You're detecting different volatiles within the tea liquor. These flavors actually are real. What's unreal about this is the fact that all of us genetically are different. So what you taste as clove, I may taste as something slightly different. But really, what you're telling me is there's aromatics in this tea, and there absolutely are aromatics in this tea.
The soft, sweet aftertaste lingers.
Soft, sweet aftertaste lingers. Why do I love this comment? Because ancient tree. How do you know that I'm not lying about this? How do you know that this isn't monoclonal? You know because of what you just told me. Soft, sweet. And then you use this word, the L word. It lingers. Monoclonal does not linger. You get a sweetness. Yeah, oh, I get sweetness. Hey, gone. Who stole the sweetness? With this, not only do you get a sweetness, it lasts for a long time. This is how you know I told the truth. And when you go into a tea shop and they claim to be selling ancient tree, if that flavor is not lingering, you better find another tea shop.
Another participant observes a delicate round flavor and a smooth round flavor. No sharp notes on any single flavor. And he adds delicate round scent or fragrance as well.
Delicate round flavor is the centerpiece of this comment. And the commentator notes that it also lingers throughout and that it changes, but it's always there. It's always lingering, even as it's changing. Another characteristic of old and ancient tree.
Another participant asks, hey, are there still any undiscovered tea groves in China?
Ah, I love this question. Are there any undiscovered tea groves in China? All right. Now I have to draw back the curtains and show you the secret area. This year, we got tea from a newly discovered tea grove. It was tea that nobody is harvesting. It's from ancient tree. It was discovered by accident because this mountain is not heavily populated. It's indigenous peoples who aren't doing tea. And somebody wandered up there and said, oh my God, this is ancient tree. And so scientists from various parts of China got a group together because the provincial government, this is in Yunnan, by the way, provincial government said, hey, discovered another place. And by the way, this place is so secret that the scientists won't even tell us where exactly the mountain is. However, they did do us the great favor of sending us some tea from this mountain. So what does this mean for China? I mean, when we think of China, when the New York Times or the Washington Post portrays China, almost always, you get the picture of Beijing or Shanghai, people all over the place. It's like there's no place in China that doesn't have people. That's the impression you get. But when you go down to Yunnan, that's not the impression you get. These places are dark and mysterious. Some of the places in Yunnan are dark and mysterious. And they have things, animals, insects, all sorts of plants that are as yet, in quotes, undiscovered. Why? These places are hard to get to. Infrastructure is not very good in some parts of Yunnan. These places are hugely remote and dangerous. You go into some of these places and spiders larger than my hand living there. I mean, just that alone probably would discourage most explorers.
Poisonous?
Poisonous, I don't know. Nobody's lived long enough.
Or do we just die of fright over the size?
Yes, both dying of fright and potentially poison. And remember, I just picked, the obvious topics. What about centipedes that have 10,000 legs and are the size of small snakes? Oh, and by the way, they're poisonous for sure. So you have all of these things existing and undiscovered. And that's why, by the way, China in 2016 started to close off a lot of these places, because all of a sudden they're seeing in magazines pictures of some of these remote places with identification of things. It's like, wait a minute, this is foreigners who have wandered into these places. Enough of that. Let's close this stuff off, designate some of it as national wildlife places, close it off. Let's start to send scientists and really understand what's up there. Because yes, that's why this is a great question, because in fact, there are many of these places still existing. All right, let's see how I'm doing. As usual, oh yes, talking a lot, trying to stay out of the scientific weeds. This is a fabulous raw black. And one of the things that you should remember is, as you drink through this, you're going to get at least 2 more great cups of this. And between the cups, smell into the cup, because you'll get a different impression of what this tea is. Yes.
What's the vintage of this tea?
This tea came to us in 2021, and I believe, hey, babe, this was picked in 2021. Yeah, this was picked in 2021. So you're really getting as close to new as possible. And by the way, I ran out of time, but I'm not out of time yet. What do you do with this tea? Can it be saved for any amount of time? I'll tell you, in China, you save this for 30 years and it becomes fully fermented. And the whole nature of the taste, year by year, the taste will change. 2 reasons. The microorganisms keep working on it. And then at some point, oxidation surpasses the microorganisms in promoting the change. Yes.
A participant asked whether or not this tea is available for sale in the shop.
Oh, so a participant has looked on the website and discovered that it's not for sale on the website. So the participant smartly asked, if we wander into the shop, can we buy 5 to 10 pounds of this? And the answer is, of course. We have this in the shop and we're very willing to share it with you. Yes.
Are there any foods you would pair this with?
Okay, food pairings. So remembering that there's lots of subtleties in this tea. So here's my advice. The first time around, when you have guests over, no food pairing. You have them taste through this so that they understand the nature of this tea, because that by itself will blow your guests totally away. Now, the second time they come over, they already know what this is. And so the second time around, this is great if you're serving this with a nice salad without tomatoes or without radishes. You can't have radishes, and tomatoes in that salad. Otherwise, and you can't have strong dressing. Otherwise, you'll interfere with the flavor. But avocados, cucumbers, oh, that's wonderful.
Have you had a chance to try the tea that you got sent specially from the top secret, not to be named location?
So this questioner is trying to get deeper in the forest. And I appreciate that, because when I go to the forest, I also have insatiable curiosity. Knowing the tea master and myself, I ask you this: are we always insatiably curious? And all of you know the answer is yes. So could we even wait a day after the stuff arrived in the shop to try it? No, we tried it right away. So here's the issue. So let's get this issue out front, in front of everybody, so that you don't ask me the next obvious question. The next obvious question is, can you come in and buy it at the shop? And technically the answer is no, but realistically, did I say no? Technically the answer is yes, but realistically the answer is no. This cost us a tremendous amount of money to get this in here. And none of you are likely to want to pay that. And it comes in cakes. So it's not loose leaf, so I can't just, sell a little bit. You either buy a cake or not. And technically, we're not expecting anybody to come in and actually purchase this. And the other aspect of this is we're still learning ourselves. And as we go through the various tastings of this, and as it ages, we're trying to get our arms around this. We continue to talk to the scientists about the whole environment. It's just really fascinating. And so we're not in a hurry to fully understand this, because you really can't be in a hurry. You have to taste things over time. Even intensity that you had today, you taste over time, and it continues to produce changes. This thing, one of you is going to ask this question, so I'm going to answer it beforehand. Why did we call this intensity? It's not because its intensity is stringent or any of those reasons. It's because the intensity of variety in the flavors, including your early capture of clove flavor, honey flavor, sweetness, all of that stuff is in here, and it keeps giving and giving and giving. This thing, this tea, from a value proposition in terms of flavor and variety and interestingness, it's hard to top. And that's the intensity that we're talking about. So at any rate, we are extremely, extremely, extremely happy to share this with all of you. And we put this up there as a comparison to a different type of intense experience over these next 2 weeks. Because the next week, you're going to have a spiritual tea. Oops, did I use that word, spiritual? We know better in this shop, because that sounds cultish. What I should have said is a tea from a spiritual mountain. Now that's a fair statement in Sichuan. And this tea will blow you away. And it's a green tea. And then the following week, we're going to have another green tea with a completely different flavor profile. And remembering this year, we did something different. We got higher grades. In fact, the very highest grades of all the teas this year. So you are experiencing stuff that lots of people look for in China, but they can't get because there's scarcity. Remember, ancient old tree is scarce. And that's why most of the people in China don't get exposed to this. The other thing they don't get exposed to is going there and seeing the process. we go there. Wonderful to be with all of you today, and more wonderful to hear your commentary, because as usual, you never disappoint us with the great commentary about what you're having. So, what are your responsibilities for this week? It's to stay healthy and make sure that you're ready for another great week next week. Have a great one. You take care now.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.